happening tonight in Vancouver.
A man is charged with sexual assault and interference in connection to an alleged incident on Granville Island earlier this month. But police are saying about reports of similar assaults in the area.
As vaccination registration continues to jump here in BC, many post-secondary schools have now added further COVID-19 safety protocols. And the Premier makes a direct address to those attempting to create and sell fake BC vaccine cards.
Well, they won't be able to sell fake exemption cards because they don't exist.
And change at the top. The Whitecaps are looking for a new manager tonight. Head coach Mark Dos Santos is no longer with the club.
This is City News Everywhere.
Good evening. A 42-year-old man is charged with sexual assault and interference in connection to an alleged incident on Granville Island earlier this month. A 12-year-old girl was groped and assaulted at the public market on August 13th. VPD says the girl came forward after hearing about a series of gropings along the seawall in recent weeks. Investigators are now trying to determine if 3 earlier incidents are related to this assault. Anyone with information is being asked to contact the VPD's Sex Crimes Unit. Mounties in Surrey say speed was a factor in the crash that killed 3 teenagers in the Fraser Heights neighborhood. RCMP says the investigation is still ongoing, but they have determined the car the 3 boys were in was going faster than the posted speed limit. That's before it slammed into a tree in the early hours of Saturday. 17-year-old Parker Magnuson and 16-year-olds Caleb Reimer and Ronan Sharma are being remembered by friends and family and the wider hockey community. The Vancouver Canucks, the NHL, and the Humboldt Broncos were among the organizations to share their condolences on social media. Speaking about the crash, Sergeant Eleanor Sturko from the Surrey RCMP says police won't be revealing much more about the crash as investigations continue.
Our investigators did determine that the vehicle was traveling at a significantly higher rate of speed than the posted speed limit at the time of the collision. A lot of people are asking if we would release the actual speed, and I can explain the reason we're not releasing that exact number at this time is that we have not been able to corroborate that with a second computer that's inside the vehicle. So the collision reconstruction and analysis team, as well as the criminal collision investigation team, took measurements, and they did access some information from one computer inside that vehicle. We haven't been able to access at this time the second computer. We're not sure, based on the condition of the vehicle, whether that computer will be accessed, and if it is, whether or not they'll be able to retrieve any data from it. So at this time we won't be releasing an exact number as to what the speed was, but we do know that it was unfortunately significantly higher than the posted speed limit at the time of the collision.
One of the teenagers will be laid to rest tomorrow. RCMP says it will continue to offer support to the community. Let's talk about COVID now, and as we head into the weekend, it is another grim milestone for BC. We've recorded the highest number of single-day infections in over 4 months, with 867 new cases. 3 people have died in the last 24 hours, all in the Interior Health Region. There are 159 people in hospital with the virus. 84 of them are in intensive care. Well, Health Canada has approved the use of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine in children as young as 12. So that means there are now 2 vaccines authorized for young people. Ottawa approved the use of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for children and teens in early May. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization is meeting next week to discuss if booster shots should be offered to people with compromised immune systems. This is something Ontario is already doing.
If people are rushing to get vaccines to meet the needs of the vaccine card, I think that's good news.
Getting BC back on track. Premier John Horgan is applauding those deciding to make the jump to get the COVID-19 vaccine after the province announced the implementation of the BC vaccine card earlier this week. But the move has some people voicing concerns, as BC's vaccine passport system won't just impact those who choose not to get vaccinated.
This last push was to protect those those and give some comfort to those who had taken steps that so they could know with confidence when they sit down at the Canucks game or they go out to the theater or they're gathering with people in the community as we are right now, that people are doing that confident that their neighbors are taking the same steps to protect themselves.
On Friday, Horgan addressed the rumors of people attempting to make forgeries of the vaccine card before it has even been released.
And the forgeries that you talk about may appear, but I don't believe they'll be successful. And with respect to enforcement, it's not unlike with respect to nightclubs or the hospitality sector. If they have difficulty with patrons, they call law enforcement.
BC's vaccine passport system isn't sitting right with some British Columbians, with its policy that those who can't get the shot for medical reasons will still be denied service. When New Westminster resident Jens Mowat got his vaccine dose in mid-May, he had a severe allergic reaction and required a dose of an EpiPen every day for 3 days. He's now been advised to not get another dose.
If I get another Pfizer dose, I could potentially have that issue where my airway is closing again. After October 24th, with no medical exemptions, I'm now in a situation where I'm going to be treated in the exact same way as someone who has refused a vaccine entirely.
Anxiety is also building for a man living on Vancouver's streets who says many homeless people don't have photo ID. He worries what the card system will mean for them.
Homeless people are going to have their hands full just dealing with that. The idea that now they've got to basically run around and go to some office and try to solve this problem or that problem, get some ID and do this, it's just not going to be high on their list of priorities.
Meanwhile, UBC, SFU, UVic, and Thompson Rivers University have now announced vaccination guidelines for those attending classes in September. You'll need to either be vaccinated against COVID-19 or undergo rapid testing. But the UBC AMS Student Society say they wish it went one step further, suggesting all students should be required to get vaccinated unless they have a valid religious or medical exemption.
Why is a lecture theater treated so differently from a movie theater, where arguably actually in a lecture theater, students are sitting even closer? So if you're required to have a vaccine to go into a movie theater, why not into a lecture hall?
For those who were hesitant to get the vaccine before, but in light of the BC vaccine card requirements are now considering it, President of Doctors of BC, Dr. Matthew Chow, says there's no judgment.
We're not judging anybody for waiting this long or waiting until now. With the vaccine passports, that's water under the bridge. We're just so happy that people are getting that shot.
In New Westminster, Ashley Burr, City News.
The Vancouver Whitecaps have fired coach Mark Dos Santos along with assistant Phil Dos Santos. The news comes one day after Vancouver lost to Canadian Premier League club Pacific FC in the Canadian Championship. However, the Whitecaps are currently on an 8-game unbeaten streak in MLS play. Whitecaps director of methodology Vanni Sartini will lead the team as acting head coach.
A top bank economist has warned that provinces that don't bring in these vaccine mandates will have slower job creation and a weaker recovery than those that do.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau announces a big investment into vaccine passports if re-elected.
Well, cooler temperatures and rain continue to help hundreds of crews battling forest fires in BC. There are now fewer than 240 burning, most of them in the Kamloops, the Southeast, and Prince George fire centers. The White Rock Lake and Lytton Creek fires are still classified as out of control, but the 635 square kilometer Tremont Creek fire and 742 square kilometer Flat Lake fire are being held. Premier John Horgan toured Logan Lake this afternoon and thanked first responders and BC Wildfire Service who are working around the province.
We're in Vernon last night, and at shift change, at the end of every evening, the people of Vernon come together at the entrance to the fire center, and they cheer on the firefighters. The trucks, the structural firefighters that are coming in, hit the sirens. There's a sense of community, quite extraordinary. And to be able to sit and talk with firefighters from every corner of the province, to talk about some on their third and fourth rotation, was profoundly moving, certainly for me. I have a family, as I just said to Chief Wilson. I have 3 members of my family are professional firefighters. I know the challenges that they face every day, but to come to an interface fire as we experienced here just outside of Logan Lake, to do the hard work, to put yourself on the line to protect people and property is quite extraordinary, and it's very powerful to see firsthand.
Over time, we've seen an electorate that is really pulling apart in terms of its priority issues, and nowhere is it more stark now than in the split that we see.
Canada's political centre may be disappearing as new polling suggests that Conservative and Liberal voters have very different ideas about what the big issue is for this election. The latest poll from Angus Reid suggests people who think taxes are the big issue are likely to vote Tory, while likely NDP and Liberal voters are identifying climate change as critical.
What you're seeing now is a real split and a real hardening. So no longer does a voter for the Liberal Party prioritize fiscal policy in the same way that a voter for the Liberals might have in 1993 or 1997 or 2000.
Shachi Kurl from Angus Reid says previous Liberal governments have focused on fiscal responsibility, like when Paul Martin was finance minister. But she says the issues that voters care about and what parties are campaigning on have changed. The change isn't just coming from the Liberals. Brian Mulrooney's Progressive Conservatives introduced Canada's first acid rain legislation and took action on emissions that deplete the ozone layer. But today, just 6% of people who identify climate change as their top issue say they're voting Conservative.
People have concerns about housing, about the cost of living. They have concerns about the economy in general. And so I think Conservatives are smart to focus on that issue, even if the Liberals want to, say, emphasize other questions like abortion or vaccination or healthcare privatization.
Daniel Blanc from McGill University says the Conservative focus on pocketbook issues may be paying off. Erin O'Toole is now neck and neck with Justin Trudeau in recent polling, having closed a 10-point gap at the campaign's start. Blanc says the Conservative focus on affordability and household income helped, while the Liberals' attacks on O'Toole's position on vaccine mandates and abortion access aren't landing.
Of course, the Liberals have attacked them on all sorts of issues, including healthcare, but these are not new lines of attack. And so far, they have not really damaged Erin O'Toole and the Conservative campaign.
Now, Ballon underlined that while this campaign may be a short one, a month can be a long time in politics. And as the possibility of a Conservative minority government emerges, Liberal attack lines on abortion and vaccination may begin to stick. In Ottawa, Shally Lee, City News.
So last night we were getting quite a few tweets and calls asking about all the smoke that was coming from Burnaby. In fact, some listeners calling into our radio station, News 1130, said they could see the smoke while they were driving over the Iron Workers Memorial Bridge. So it turned out this was a controlled explosion at the Parkland refinery that, quote, got a bit out of hand, and that is according to Burnaby Fire. Crews were able to get the situation under control, and they noted there was no risk to the public.
We will create a $1 billion COVID-19 proof of vaccination fund.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau hoping a big investment into vaccine passports will help pull the country out of the pandemic, create a wedge with other parties, and maybe win some votes at the same time.
If your premier mandates that everyone in your local restaurant or gym or other non-essential locations must be fully vaccinated and show proof, we'll pay for the development and rollout of that program.
Requiring a vaccine passport has become a contentious issue among many Canadians. Provinces like Quebec and BC already working on implementing them for places like restaurants and movie theaters. Campaigning in Mississauga, Ontario, with the city's mayor beside him, Trudeau says Canada's economy will suffer even more without them.
A top bank economist has warned that provinces that don't bring in these vaccine mandates will have slower job creation and a weaker recovery than those that do.
Critics claim vaccine passports will create a two-tiered system that infringes on the freedoms of those not wanting a vaccine. Campaigning in Newfoundland, Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole saying he will help provinces who decide to go the passport route.
And if the provinces make decisions on proof of vaccinations, vaccine passports, we will support and respect what the provinces decide to do.
Meanwhile, in Thunder Bay, Ontario, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh saying Ottawa should take on sole responsibility for creating the passport.
I think the federal government should just do it. I think it makes a lot of sense to have a federal document that we can use to be able to travel around our country.
Ottawa is already working on a vaccine passport for international travel, which they've offered to provinces to use. In Ottawa, Nigel Newlove, City News.
Almost 4 months after making a multi-million-dollar request to help outlast COVID-19, Vancouver's PNE is closing that gap. Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport Minister Melanie Mark says the fair is one of many events across BC with access to a new $12.9 million recovery fund. Under this program, the most the PNE can access is $250,000. Here's the update you've all been waiting for. A large snake that slithered out of its enclosure in Vancouver's South Granville neighborhood. It has been found. Yes, the snake had apparently made its way into a small opening in the apartment on Wednesday night. And the opening used to be part of a fireplace. It was Thursday morning when the owner woke up to find that Cody had escaped. And Cody, if you're wondering, is an 8-foot-long Colombian boa constrictor. Police had told people to be on the lookout for Cody, but a Facebook post from the owner says she has Cody back at the apartment on Granville and 14th, and she is sorry to have caused any fear. Vancouver firefighters were posing for the latest edition of their charity calendar today, and the 2022 Hall of Flame calendar is cuter than ever. For the first time since its launch, firefighters are teaming up with dogs. Firefighters from across Vancouver were joined by dogs from the Urban Search and Rescue Team for the shoot, and Golden Retriever Lola was also ready for a close-up. She is Vancouver Fire's service dog and helps crews with mental health proceeds from the calendar, helping the many charities Vancouver firefighters support, including the BC Burn Fund, the Lifeline for Seniors program, and Snacks for Kids. The calendars, by the way, will be on sale across the Lower Mainland and online. Single event sports betting is now the law of the land in Canada, and yes, that includes BC. Starting today, the BC Lottery Corporation will allow you to wager on individual events on its playnow.com online portal. That includes tomorrow's tilts between the BC Lions and the Ottawa Red Blacks, the Seattle Seahawks season opener on September 12th, as well as races and fights. Single event sports betting was made legal as part of Bill C-218, Ottawa's Safe and Regulated Sports Betting Act, and that passed in June. Vancouver's news is always available on the radio with News 1130 or online anytime at citynews1130.com. Your next edition of City News is tonight at 11. Thanks so much for watching. Have a